All right, welcome everybody to another exciting episode of Under the Dome. After a week off, we're back. Not much has been going on. I mean, we just had rookie minicamp. We had the draft. We've got Saints signing some players. Um, it's still a pretty active off season. I mean, we probably aren't going to get a break from any kind of Saints news. Probably not until July, the 4 or 6 weeks before they go to training camp.
Yeah, that's about right. Because like you said, we've had draft analysis, draft over analysis. We went right into rookie minicamp. We have 2 OTA sessions before the end of the month. We'll get that 4 or 6 week break before training camp. But even then. And I know we'll talk about some of these names tonight. Even then, there are still some veteran free agents out there that the Saints or other teams are going to take a look at, starting quality veterans. So I don't expect a real quiet period this for the remainder of the summer.
One of the positions that I think the Saints still need to address, and we'll talk about rookie minicamp and so forth, but one of the positions the Saints still need to address is safety. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers flipped the script and cut a contract for Antoine Winfield Jr. Was it $45 million? Something ridiculous like that. Yeah. This huge safety contract in a time when no one's paying safeties anymore. What does this say? I mean, he is a great player. He's one of the best safeties in the NFL. But what is this really saying? I mean, the Bucs have paid Baker Mayfield. They paid a safety. Do the Bucs think this is going to be their next step, that they're going to advance in the playoffs and they're now trying to gear up to make a run? What do you think this says about them?
I think it's pretty clear that it is. Because they've taken a page right out of Sean Payton's Saints book. Late through the last decade. Like you said, they like what they saw out of Baker Mayfield, so they re-signed him. They re-signed Mike Evans, re-signed Levante David, re-signed Vita Vea. Now extended Antoine Winfield. Basically, like I said, exactly what the Saints were doing. With all their veteran stars. To make one last run through the end of Drew Brees' career. Now. Nobody is saying Baker Mayfield is Drew Brees, but again, like you kind of suggested, it seems to me like Tampa Bay feels like that at least they have the nucleus in place for another legitimate championship run. Now, you could agree or disagree with that. That's certainly any of our prerogatives. But the Buccaneers have won, albeit a weak NFC South for 3 straight years. Came within just a few minutes of upsetting the Detroit Lions last year's playoffs to go to the NFC Championship game. So. Obviously, they like what they have in the building, and they're doing what they have to keep it. As a Saints fan, it's hard to be critical of that strategy because, like I said, that's exactly what New Orleans did. And New Orleans got 4 straight division titles out of it, and frankly, were robbed out of two additional Super Bowl appearances.
Absolutely. And that's how I'm looking at it. I mean, they let a couple players walk again. I mean, one of them is Devin White. Right. But they feel like they've had a good draft last year. They got a great draft this year. They look at the weak NFC conference, not just the NFC South, but a weak NFC conference where the only real challengers are really in the NFC East and Detroit. Now, granted, the 49ers have been in the Super Bowl, so they're aware of the 49ers, but they think that they can make a challenge to the NFC to be that team that's in the NFC Championship game and maybe upset a team like the Eagles or maybe upset a Detroit Lions team who they feel like they're better than them. I don't know if they can beat the 49ers, but but that's their mindset. They think if
Mm-hmm.
we get a few breaks, we can do something. Now, the interesting thing is they lost their offensive coordinator, who's now the head coach of the Carolina Panthers. Um, yes, that is. That is the 73 Saints versus Bills. Saints first ever shutout. They win 13-0. Um, yeah, that's the one. But yeah, so I can understand the thinking, but I don't think the Bucks are that good. I think they
No.
losing that offensive coordinator is going to set Mayfield back to kind of be the Mayfield we're used to seeing, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the Bucks defense is as good as they think it is. I think they are looking this more as a window that's starting to close a little bit as far as some of their players, like Levante David. I mean, do you think that's a fair assessment?
I do, and you bring up Levante David. I think you could put Mike Evans in that category as well. Um, And yeah, the Buccaneers do have holes. Cornerback position being one of them, a glaring hole in my opinion. And although they made moves this offseason, to add athleticism to the edge rusher position, a lot of that either through draft picks or free agent signings, a lot of that has yet to be proven. Can Vita Vea, a heavier player whose injuries have kind of caught up with him the last year or two. Can he remain or can he bounce back to the level that he was 2 or 3 years ago? A lot of questions on the Buccaneers defense, which does make you think, that maybe they think they're better on that side of the ball than what reality, actually has them. Baker Mayfield, we know what Baker Mayfield is. And God love you, Sean Williams. Baker Mayfield is what he is. Was last season an aberration or a legitimate revitalizing of his career? Obviously, Tampa Bay thinks the latter. But if you watch Baker Mayfield since he's come into the league, he's really been nothing more than a serviceable quarterback, and a player who needs a strong personality in the coaching staff to rein him in and keep from playing hero ball. And now that they lost Dave Canales to the Panthers, is the new offensive staff going to be able to do that? Are they going to be able to surround him with enough weapons and enough support, to where if they do rein him in and keep him as a solid game manager, do they have enough talent to win those games?
Exactly. Yeah. And Mayfield, he's a short quarterback. He is a streaky guy. I get the feeling out of Mayfield is what I saw out of Geno Smith with Seattle. Kind of got that lightning in a bottle for a year, but then the reason why this guy has bounced around the league a little bit starts to show up again. And speaking of quarterbacks, Detroit just paid Jared Goff $212 million or something ridiculous like that. Because Detroit thinks they're all in. So, Saints fans have been critical of the Saints spending habits and going all in. But we're starting to see more and more teams doing this now. Now, I think Detroit is much more of an up-and-coming team than Tampa. But Jared Goff's got his problems too. Goff has got some streakiness to him. Goff really needs almost perfect protection and perfect execution to really be an effective quarterback. He's much more of a game manager, which is one of the reasons why after he got the big contract in LA, the Rams moved on from him. I mean, do you think that's a fair assessment of his ability?
Yeah, absolutely. And every aspect you described about Jared Goff sounds suspiciously dead on target. In describing in the way you can describe another certain quarterback that wears number 4 and has a fleur de lis on the side of his head.
That's where I'm going with this.
I know that there are millions, feels like millions of Derek Carr haters out there, and we'll address them in a moment. but realistic, even you Derek Carr, you New Orleans Derek Carr haters, if you rewind a year from now and you're honest with yourself, forget being honest with us, and you're honest with yourself, you line up Jared Goff, Baker Mayfield, and Derek Carr all in a row at this time last year, and there are a lot of people that would take Derek Carr first over either Goff or Mayfield. That's just reality.
Absolutely. And that was the thing I kept pointing out to a lot of people. And this time last year, people were pretty excited about Derek Carr. There was potential, he's getting out of the Raiders. That's a dysfunctional organization. You get him on a team where you've got some good players, a good chemistry, good locker room. You maybe can get a good, consistent player out of Carr. But I don't really want to spend a whole lot of time on this, but they had a ranking of quarterbacks, and they had Carr rated like 29th or 30th, something ridiculous, something incredibly stupid, because they had the unproven rookies rated higher than him. They had guys that Carr beat rated higher than him. And I've always said that the NFL has probably got about 6 or 8 quarterbacks that are elite players.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's about 20 who are all the same. You can just throw them in a bag and shake it up, dump it out, and whoever falls out, that's pretty much the same guy all the way across, whether it's Carr, whether it's Goff, whether it's Mayfield, Cousins, on down the line. It's just they're all basically the same kind of guy.
Yeah.
Streaky guys with some potential that you think you can kind of do something with, but not the elite quarterbacks. So the rankings I thought was incredibly insane. It's stupid. It was just clickbait to get people talking about it. That's why I don't want to talk about it, but it's clickbait just to get people talking. CBS put this garbage out. Justin Fields, real quick. I did see the story on Justin Fields. I don't know if you saw this or not. It's somebody leaking this out, saying that Justin Fields was part of a toxic locker room that they tried to, in Chicago, Nick Foles kind of tried to coach him in the locker room, and he was totally disinterested and put his head down and all these other things. What do you make of stories like this, especially coming out now, 6 weeks, a month, 2 months after he got traded to Pittsburgh?
It's always an interesting read, when something like this happens. But you do see it every single year when a big name changes teams for whatever reason. Even if it's a rather harmonious split, like it feels like Justin Fields and the Bears was, agreeable to both sides. But again, you see it every single year. Something leaks out right after suspiciously enough, right after they leave, but after the deal is already done. Where a locker room cancer, toxic quarterback room, toxic relationship between player and coach. We'll see. For one thing, I think Justin Fields kind of got a bad rap. Wasn't really able to develop in Chicago. Part of that is on Justin Fields. Part of that is on the Bears coaching staff. Part of that is on the lack of talent that was on the field surrounding him. I'm rooting for him to do well in Pittsburgh. I really am, because the Steelers are starved for a quarterback themselves. But I've always liked the kid, even coming out of Ohio State. He always felt like he had a good attitude to me. Was at least coachable, to the point that he wouldn't create problems or anything like that. At least I certainly hope that was the case, because you remember the quarterback coach that Fields and Foles had in Chicago was the guy the New Orleans Saints have now, is Andrew Janocko, excuse me. And we only have to go back as recently as last year to realize that, to remember how much fire Derek Carr was getting for his attitude problems, his relationship or lack thereof, the break in the relationship between Carr and receivers, be it Olave, be it Thomas, be it Shaheed, whomever. So if the Bears legitimately had this kind of problem in Chicago, yeah, it's always the fault of more than one person. You can't point the finger at Justin Fields. You can't point the finger at Nick Foles. You can't point the finger at Andrew Janocko. You can point the finger at all of them, though. So I certainly hope that there isn't legitimate fire to this smoke, and it's just some, like you point out, you're always going to see or hear BS stories this time of year, BS rankings this time of year, because the poor writer, and I'll pat myself on the back for this, and us at the Saints News Network, because we don't do this. We legitimately find bona fide topics to write about. We don't do, anybody that gives you clickbait is just desperate for to stay relevant, and lazy because they aren't figuring out and finding their own content. It's not that hard to do.
Yeah, and my thing with Fields is, and I said this at the time, and you can go back and look at the show from then and stuff. I said when the quarterback coach and people who were associated with the Bears were looking at, including the offensive coordinator who they interviewed, were talking to the Saints. They talked about Justin Fields because everyone knew the Bears were going to take a quarterback, so they were going to move on from Fields. I'm sure the Saints pulled up their scouting reports on Fields. They were probably pretty positive, and they asked these guys, hey, give me a thumbnail sketch of this guy. What was he like in the locker room? What was he like in the QB room? How did he process information? How did he do these things? And I said at the time, if the Saints really had no interest in this guy, they must have got the reports of stay away from him. He's terrible. It was a nightmare in there. It was just horrible to deal with, all these things. And I'm not legitimizing that story, but there may have been a little bit of smoke about this because these are, issues that one of the reasons why Fields went for as low as he did.
Yeah.
Because coaches talk
and
players talk.
And also why Janocko was looking for a job at the end of last season.
Yes, absolutely. If you give this guy a job, if you bring this guy over here, you may not survive. He may be a coach killer. You don't know. I don't know. I'm not trying to, besmirch a guy who is not with a dysfunctional organization, because they're not disorganized, but a dysfunctional organization. I mean, the Bears, in their history, and they are one of the oldest teams in the NFL. They are one of the original franchises. Have never had a 4,000-yard passer. Never. The only team, we're talking about a franchise that's over 100 years old, has never had a 4,000-yard passer. They've had quarterbacks combined for 4,000 yards, but never one individual. The Saints have one quarterback who's thrown for 5,000 yards 5 times. The Saints. I'm just saying, so it's truly a remarkable statistic to have that. So to me, and this is what, the 4th or 5th franchise quarterback they've drafted in the top 2 or 3, and just in the recent years, past 5 years, Mitch Trubisky, Justin Fields, and now Caleb Williams, all in the top 3. So.
And then you throw in other quarterbacks that were drafted in the top half of the first round: Cade McNown, Rex Grossman. I feel like I'm missing somebody, but that's a gruesome list.
Rex Grossman, who actually took the Bears to the Super Bowl. So it's an organization that desperately wants to get the quarterback position right. So they desperately want to get a team in place. But, they had to cut bait on Justin Fields. So to me, the Saints would have been a logical choice. Clearly, they were interested in getting a quarterback. They brought in Nathan Peterman. They brought in Kellen Mond. They drafted Spencer Rattler. They're still interested in a quarterback. They are not. Carr is not. Carr is the man for now, but he's not Mrs. Right. He just Mrs. Right now. I mean, that's kind of how the story goes. So where I'm going with this too, so people don't think this is a Chicago Bears podcast, we are we had mini camp. Spencer Rattler is now the quarterback the fans are all in love with. This time last year, we got the photo shoot. We had the legendary photo shoot of Jake Hayner. There were guys 2 years ago couldn't wait to see Ian Book under center. Why, I have no idea, but they wanted to see Ian Book. Garrett Grayson at one time was talked about as the successor to Drew Brees. So now it's Spencer Rattler's turn. Spencer Rattler, in your opinion, we've talked a little bit about him from post draft, but let's kind of recap. How do you? He's a 5th round pick. I get that, but let's just review him as a draft pick coming out of college. How do you view this man?
Well, first of all, Alan, it doesn't. Maybe it doesn't matter how I view him, because according to an alarmingly large portion of the Saints fans, he's ready for the Hall of Fame because he went 11 for 12, in 7-on-7 rookie minicamp drills against undrafted players, that still have yet to be signed onto an active roster. So maybe we don't need to talk any further. Maybe the quarterback problem is solved. But okay, hyperbole aside, Spencer Rattler, there was a reason why he lost his job at Oklahoma. There was a reason why his South Carolina teams went 13-12 with him as the starter. And yeah, I know people will point to, you need talent around him and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, you do. But the last time I checked, a quarterback great elevates that, the abilities of players around him, makes average players good, makes good players great, makes great players elite. And that's not something that Spencer Rattler ever did in college. I do think that he has underrated arm strength. I actually love his delivery. He has a very natural delivery. You got to love his swagger and certainly mental toughness. To bounce back from so much adversity going through college, and to still have that kind of confident play about him. But I'll tell you, the biggest positive thing that stuck out to me about Spencer Rattler over the last year to year and a half was the vastly improved footwork that I saw out of him. Mm-hmm. Continued development of that footwork, that's what's going to make or break him as an NFL quarterback. That part's on him, but he also needs good coaching. Again, like I said, there's a reason why he was benched at Oklahoma. Even through the SEC, I've always highly questioned his ability to read defenses. And now he's coming into the NFL where he's going to have all kinds of intricate packages thrown at him. You said it a couple of weeks ago, and I couldn't agree with you more. With Spencer Rattler, folks, you have to do, folks that want Rattler inserted as anointed as the Saints starting quarterback right now, do more than watch the YouTube highlights. Watch a whole game of Spencer Rattler, because you will have the roller coaster ride, the very kind of roller coaster ride y'all hated, despised with Jameis Winston. You could get that from Spencer Rattler. He's a developmental project. I don't blame the Saints for taking a fly. Don't make no mistake. This pick was not made by Dennis Allen. This pick was not made by Mickey Loomis. This pick was made by Clint Kubiak. They went to Clint and said, what quarterback left on the board in day 3? What quarterback left on the board right now from the 5th round on do you think fits your system best, and do you want him? And undoubtedly, Clint Kubiak said, Spencer Rattler fits my system best. If he's still there at pick 150, I want him. Well, you got him. So I expected that, that the Saints would, we both expected the Saints would draft a quarterback in round 3. We had our speculation as far as who it might be, who it might not be. But we also all agreed, you, me, and Brendan, all agreed that whoever Clint Kubiak thinks fits his system best is who the Saints are going to go after. Well, ultimately, that's who it was. Whether that translates to anything for the future, only time will tell. I know everybody, the Rattler supporters like to throw out, oh, Tom Brady, Brock Purdy, Dak Prescott, they were all day 3 picks. Are you saying that the Spencer Rattler is not going to be one of those guys? No, I'm not. But we didn't know that Tom Brady was going to be Tom Brady or Purdy, et cetera, et cetera. So again, it's worth a flyer to take a pick on a quarterback in day 3, because you don't know if you're going to get one of these guys. But I mentioned 3 guys out of literally hundreds and hundreds of late round quarterback draft choices over the many decades of the NFL, and you can only point out 3 guys. I think that's telling in itself. We said it on draft night. We've said it since, and I'll say it again. Spencer Rattler was not N-O-T, not drafted to provide competition for Derek Carr. Spencer Rattler was drafted to A, provide competition for Jake Haener, and or B, to see if he does fit Kubiak's system as a developmental prospect, and maybe you catch something special. Period.
And one of the things that's really unfortunate is a few years ago, you had NFL Europe. I say a few years ago, it's probably 20 years now. But, you have NFL Europe where you would send developmental guys, a Jake Delhomme, a Kurt Warner, Leroy Glover played in that league. You send a guy over there to get the snaps he needs so he can grow and develop. But what's unfortunate for a guy like Rattler is there's only so many snaps that you get in training camp. You've got 4 quarterbacks out there competing. We all pretty much assume Nathan Peterman is going to be the first one out the door. But you're still competing with Derek Carr, who gets the lion's share of the snaps. Jake Haener is going to get a majority of the snaps. Preseason games, you're going to be competing with this guy for snaps in these preseason games. There's only 3 games. And then once the regular season starts, you might run the scout team. You might, you get no snaps because the quarterback, the starter, is taking all the snaps. So this guy has to take mental reps, show what he can do in the quarterback room. And he just isn't going to get those physical snaps that he needs to improve his footwork, to improve his launch point, to get used to throwing under pressure. People wonder why mediocre quarterbacks seem to just stay around in the league for so long. It's because they show something. So they can digest and translate huge playbooks, Leviathan-looking playbooks, and then move on to translate it to whatever system they're in now, make it work, and execute. For a rookie quarterback, it's so hard to do that unless you're a high draft pick. And what did we just talk about? Guys like Justin Fields, guys like Kenny Pickett, all teams moving on from them within just a couple of years, and they spent high draft picks on these guys. What happens when you're just a 5th round pick? You don't cost any money. It's no investment of time, anything like that. You can say, you know what? Yeah, he's got a good arm, but I didn't like the way he was in the classroom. I thought he was kind of half-stepping it in the classroom. He didn't seem that sharp. I'm going to take another guy next year. I can get a dozen Spencer Rattlers in the draft. And we got Haener last year in the draft. We got Rattler this year in the draft. There's no rules saying they don't bring in a guy next year if they don't like what they've seen. So it's really, really, really tough. He's got a huge mountain to climb. And he's not going to climb that mountain purely based on arm talent. It's going to have to take him really showing something to Kubiak, to his position coach to his teammates that you want to go ahead and take your time and invest in this kid.
Mhm.
Um, because he could be something special. Not that he could be a starter. He still has to get to the point where he can be a Chase Daniel who traveled, how many teams did he play for? Traveled 6, 7 teams, made a ton of money, never taken a snap.
Mhm.
It's just a huge climb. It really is.
And it's going to even be a bigger climb than what it normally would be, for both him and Hayner, for that matter, because with Derek Carr, you're talking about, Clint Kubiak's a new offensive coordinator, Andrew Janako's a new quarterback coach.
Mhm.
Carr has to get used to them and their system. They have to get used to Carr and the way what he does best within the system that they want to run. Therefore, in past years, that if say Pete Carmichael was still there, he and Carr worked together last year, you might be able to cut down on the reps for Derek Carr, and give a longer look at Hayner, give a longer look at Rattler. You don't have that luxury now because you have to hit the ground running with Carr, and Kubiak. And if you're Dennis Allen, and I've said it before, nobody is saying it officially, but you have to at least half assume that if the Saints don't have at least a solid year and make a legitimate push for the playoffs, that all these guys are going to be looking for new jobs. So you don't have that luxury of, let's give the Rook a little bit longer look, during this preseason, because your offense better be ready to go in week 1.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now that brings up another interesting point. Kubiak's offense versus uh, Pete Carmichael, Sean Payton system. Pete Carmichael, Sean Payton was known for their long verbiage.
Mm-hmm.
They told you when the quarterback called the play in the huddle, he told you where the receivers have to line up, what routes they have to run, the blocking scheme for the offensive line, the blocking scheme for any backs. He called out any blitzers, so guys need to pick up all these things. It was all done. It was a huge verbiage. I'm drawing a blank right now. I have one in mind, but smoke, flutie, 23Y banana, all these things. And what I just said were basically all routes.
Mm-hmm.
Because a combination of the West Coast offense and Don Coryell's system, because they had the numbering system of Coryell, but it had a lot of the West Coast concepts and so forth. But when you listen to Kubiak is pretty much a simple system, very short on the verbiage, because basically it's calling out the formation and it's calling out what play it is, what the play is called. But the receiver now has to know, in this play, this is what I do. This is the route I run. This is the things I have to do. So there's a lot of onus on the players now to remember what they have to say. And the positive of this is you can get in and out of the huddle quicker.
Mm-hmm.
Sean Payton was all about tempo, and when you had Drew Brees in the with his supercomputer mind, he's been running this offense for 15 years. The first 3 or 4 words that Peyton is saying in the microphone, Brees is finishing that sentence, and he is calling it out, and he can get in and out of the huddle real quick. Whereas a guy like Winston, a guy like Carr, totally unfamiliar with the verbiage of a Peyton offense, has to think about what's being said and be able to remember to tell everybody what they're doing. So it's a quarterback friendly system. Both systems were, but this one now is more about getting in and out of the huddle quickly, getting the tempo established, getting this offense running. And based on the interviews I heard with Kubiak, it's all about running the ball. It is very much a run first system. This is going to be a really interesting year this year when people start thinking about taking fantasy football candidates. It sounds like that if you're going to draft anybody in fantasy football for the Saints, it's going to be running backs.
Yeah, it certainly feels that way. And I always call it the Shanahan Kubiak system. Because Clint Kubiak is the offensive coordinator, but I mean, his system, the core of his system, goes all the way back to Mike Shanahan with the Denver Elways late in the 1980s. Elway's backup quarterback, a guy named Gary Kubiak, who happens to be Clint's father. Gary went on to become a very, very successful offensive coordinator, not only under Shanahan, but by his own right, as well as a head coach. So, I mean, these ties go all the way back. And everybody likes to talk, myself included, everybody likes to talk about the talents of Elway. But what really put those Bronco teams over the top was once they got Terrell Davis and established balance. Elway still put up nice numbers, but a lot of his throws were off now legitimate play action. You had to establish the run early on, and then you work the ball all over the field with your passing attack. And Kubiak's system with the Houston Texans, Clint Kubiak's system with the San Francisco 49ers as recently as last year. Same thing. Gary Kubiak had was his name Amari Foster?
No,
Arian Foster. Arian Foster.
Arian Foster.
Same kind of thing. Matt Schaub made Pro Bowls because of the way Arian Foster was able to establish the running game. Matt Schaub, think about that. This system has been successful with guys like Jimmy Garoppolo, Matt Schaub, Jake Plummer. I could go on and on. Brock Purdy, I like Purdy, but he was a 7th round pick. It was able to come in and be extremely successful right away. Why? Because you have a Christian McCaffrey that was able to establish the running game, catch the ball well out of the backfield. You had tight ends, George Kittle, Shannon Sharp, etc., able to dominate the middle of the field. So your quarterback was. Flavor Dave, I've talked about Rick Dennison a lot of times. Oftentimes I will talk about Kubiak and Dennison. Everywhere that Mike Shanahan and Gary Kubiak or Clint Kubiak has been, Rick Dennison has been. So there's a direct correlation to that. So yeah, I agree with you, Alan. I fully believe that the Saints are not going to be the old 70s Steelers or the old 70s Dolphins running the football, but you better believe that everything that this system is geared and predicated upon forms from being able to establish the threat of a run.
Yeah, play action pass, bootlegs. I expect a ton of bootlegs in this system. And again, we were talking about Rattler earlier. That's where I think Rattler can really shine because I thought he did very well running bootlegs. I thought he did very well, like you mentioned, his footwork. I thought those were some of his strengths, but so was that was also the strength of Jake Haener. The thing that concerns me about a guy like Rattler is he's short. He's 6 foot tall. Drew Brees was 6 foot and some change. Baker Mayfield is 6 feet. That's short for an NFL quarterback because you're look at the size of some of these offensive linemen. He's not playing, but Trevor Penning 6'7". Fuaga, who they just drafted, was 6'6". That's with their arms here, not here. Dealing with defensive linemen who are jumping and trying to get in the passing lane. Brees compensated for that by doing not a 7-step drop, like a 12-step drop, and then he'd slot up in the pocket and launch the thing because he waited for the rush to come in around it, slide up in the pocket, then launch it. To me, that's going to be the trick on this. It's going to be how does a short quarterback like a Rattler, like a Haener, create his passing lanes to complete these passes, and that's where the bootleg starts coming into play. It's that's the kind of stuff I'm gonna be interested in watching. That's the kind of stuff I'm gonna be looking for this preseason. Um, One of the things that they talked about this past weekend, they did have all the coaches and everything. Um, one of the things they talked about this mini camp was all the construction on the Saints facility. They're putting a new weight room in. They're putting a new cafeteria in. They're redesigning a lot of the locker room and the meeting rooms and so forth. And it's funny because this is the '94 season on NFL primetime.
Mhm.
2 years later, the Saints would move into the new facility that's out there in Airline. That's 30 years ago. These games are 30 years ago. This facility is less than 30 years old, and it's gone through a couple major renovations. What a difference in the
Yeah.
league compared to what it was just the Saints when they were in that facility off of David Drive. Um, it was supposed to be a temporary facility, ended up being their home for almost 40 years. It's amazing to think about. Well, 30 years. Sorry, 30 years to 96.
Yeah, but I mean, it's all about updated facilities and the flash and pomp and circumstance of your stadium and your training facilities and your training staff and your cafeteria. That's what attracts free agency or
Mhm.
free agents rather. Obviously the money too, but if all other things are equal, you always hear players talk about. The facilities and the state of the art facilities and et cetera, and a lot. I roll my eyes at it, but a lot of big deal has been made in the last 2 or 3 years about this poll that's taken with NFL players right at the end of the season, and how teams coaches or coaching staffs are graded. That's the one I pay attention to. But the cafeteria and the food and how the franchise treats the family, and if any franchise receives low grades in any of that, they get absolutely dragged through the press and through social media. And like I said, I roll my eyes at it, but it's very interesting that the poll is legitimately taken by from all NFL players. So obviously, if you're going, if your livelihood, if your employment, I mean, forget NFL. We've all worked different places. Where we've had things that we've hated, be it the staff, forget pay too, be it the staff, be it the commute to work, the location of the job, or the conditions of the job facility. So I mean, I guess if that's legitimate, and if you're going, if you're a small to mid-market team like New Orleans, you need to have those state-of-the-art facilities, to kind of break the tie, if you're trying to attract a free agent away from a bigger market.
Absolutely. I mean, I've even heard some players talk about liking to be in Texas and Miami, in Florida because of the no income tax, no state income
Right.
tax. They enjoy that portion. So it's there's a bunch of different reasons, but you're not the Dallas Cowboys. You're not a team that's got the reputation or the marketing opportunities like a Bears team, a Giants team, an Eagles team. Where you can kind of skimp a little bit on the facilities and some of those other things because you're going to be in a major market. You're going to be in the LA market. You're going to be in the Dallas market. You're going to be one of those kind of markets where you have a lot of opportunities to get ad revenue, establish a brand, all those sort of things. So yeah, that's all part and parcel of it. In fact, I read a story not long ago that the the Chiefs are really getting ripped for some of their
Yeah.
conditions in their facilities,
Yeah.
and that's part of the reason why they want a new stadium at Arrowhead to replace Arrowhead. I should say, and they've been in that facility since 1972.
Mhm.
Um, 71 was the last year. That was the Christmas overtime game, longest game ever played. The Christmas overtime playoff game between the Dolphins and the Chiefs. It was the end really of the Chiefs Super Bowl championship team
Mhm.
runs and the beginning of the Dolphins run. And oh, look, there's your favorite team right there. Speaking of the Broncos, John does not play in this game though.
No, no, it was
Yeah,
Hugh Millen versus Jim Everett.
yep, yep. But and this is the game Torrance Small gets paid.
Yeah.
Why he gets paid because he has a monster game against the Broncos. But God, look at those uniforms. The Broncos really ruined something special by getting rid of
Yes,
those
sir.
uniforms.
Yes, sir.
But anyway, yeah. So even the Chiefs, who are defending Super Bowl champions, um, they will struggle to get free agents after a while unless they upgrade Arrowhead, unless they upgrade the training facilities and all these things. Because yeah, they've got Patrick Mahomes, and yeah, you got Andy Reid, and they've won 3 championships and all these things, but the players will talk about, yeah, but you're gonna it's gonna be like crap in there. You feel like you've seen better facilities in college than what you
Mm-hmm.
see, in this what the Chiefs have to go through. So it's interesting. So the Saints will be doing training camp in California, Irvine, California, I believe.
Yes.
Which this is the 3rd time the Saints in their franchise history have gone to California for training camp. The very first training camp was in Southern California off the coast. I want to say not Palo Alto. It was something like that. And I think this is the 2nd time they've been in I was wondering who was going to get this. I'm going to give a little secret away. So I watched 2 seasons, both seasons of Reacher on Amazon Prime. And
Is it
in the
better than the
first
movie? Is it
season,
as good as the movies?
it's better. It's better than the movies because first off, this guy's he's believable. That Tom Cruise, there's a suspension of disbelief that he's whipping all these people's asses at his height. This
Okay, that's
dude
fair.
he's 6'4" and he's built like a brick house. And they use the camera angle so it's down a little bit so he looks even taller, and he's really built. And it's none of it. When you watch these things, it's a tremendous suspension of disbelief. I mean, you're killing people and there's no cops that show up. Nobody's tracking this stuff down. Nobody's wondering where these people are, but it's just great. If you love 80s action films, and I did, you'll enjoy Reacher because I thought Steven Seagal broke people's bones in painful ways. Reacher does it even worse. I mean, I gotta fit a body in a trunk. Let me just break this leg.
I'll have to check it out.
Just right. So it's fun. It's a lot of fun. So anyway, in season 1, he goes to this town to hear Blind Blake, a blues artist, and he's in a car with somebody playing these different blues, and he mentions Howling Wolf, Smokestack Lightning. So I was trying to come up with a title for today, and I said, you know what, this song stuck in my head. I'm gonna go ahead and call this Smokestack Lightning and just go from there. But I was wondering who was going to catch this one. Sean would, but I was wondering who else was going to catch this title. So anyway, so the Saints have brought in some players. They had some tryout players as well as the undrafted free agents, and they've signed a couple of guys. What do you know about, like, for example, the center they signed for the Bears? He's a center / guard, which fits exactly what this team likes to do. What can you say about, is his name Perry, I believe?
Lucas Patrick.
Lucas Patrick. Okay.
Lucas Patrick, like you said, listed as a center on some sites, but has started all 3 interior positions, both guard spots and center. He was. Obviously, when you get anybody from the Chicago Bears offense, as we alluded to earlier in the show, you need to take that with a grain of salt and realize just how abysmal the Bears offense is. But I'll tell you, that line really opened some holes for some pedestrian running backs over the last couple years. And Lucas Patrick was part of that line. I think that Patrick is legitimately in the conversation for the starting left guard spot vacated by James Hurst's retirement and Andrus Peat's departure. I put Shane Lemieux in that conversation too. And I think Nick Saldiveri has a shot. But of those three, Lucas Patrick has started the most games of them. In fact, he started more games, than Justin Herron, Shane Lemieux, and Nick Saldiveri combined, mainly because of Lemieux's injury problems. So yeah, I think I ultimately, unless they sign someone else, which now there's still some names out there, but I consider it a little bit doubtful now. I think they've signed who they want. I think the starting left guard spot is probably going to come down to either Shane Lemieux or Lucas Patrick. And, both of them are smaller, mobile kind of guys, that excel in that zone blocking running scheme that the Kubiak-Shanahan system prides itself on. So I think it's very noteworthy, not only Lemieux and Patrick, but Udo, the tackle that they brought in, and Herron. They all fit that style that these guys want to run. Very, very athletic type of guys. Might not be the biggest guys, as far as height or weight go, but they're mobile, athletic, intelligent guys, that are capable of playing multiple positions, as you pointed out.
Well, and that's leads to one of my questions I'm going to have. The Saints did not sign Andrus Peat. Andrus Peat has now moved on to I don't even remember what team he signed with now. But
Raider.
Andrus Peat is now moved. He signed with the Raiders. Okay. Mm-hmm. Andrus Peat's gone. The Saints really made no effort to sign this guy. I think they had no interest in even bringing him back because that was somebody I thought they were going to pull back in right after the draft, and it just didn't happen. Is it because he's probably not as mobile and small that they can trust him to run that zone blocking scheme? They felt like they just kind of got a guy that was. We lucked out. We got he was healthy most of the season, but we know we're not. We've lived through the Andrus Peat experiment before. We don't want to bring him back and risk having a guy sitting on the sideline eating up a roster spot.
I think it's a strong combination of both. Andrus Peat had, as you pointed out just now, and we've alluded to several times this offseason, Andrus Peat had his healthiest year as a pro last year. So, did you really want to roll that dice again? But I also think it's noteworthy. Hurst retired. The team knew it was coming. We might not have, but the team knew it was coming well before the draft. They made no effort to re-sign Pete. They could have. I mean, he dangled out there forever. They just made no effort. They made no effort to bring back Trey Turner, another big beefy lineman. They made no effort to bring back the human turnstile that's named Max Garcia, another big beefy lineman. They've instead gone the Justin Herron, Shane Lemieux, Udo and Lucas Patrick route, all smaller, more mobile guys. So I do think that's very, very telling. I'm actually writing an article about just that fact, as well, not as we speak, because I'm doing the show, but something that's going to be published on our network tomorrow, about the differences between the players they let walk out the door compared to the players that they brought in.
Yeah, well, and Flavor Dave said he wondered why they passed on drafting BC teammate Christian Mahogany, and they brought in Kyle Hergel as undrafted free agent. And I think that fits in exactly what you just said. Mahogany was more of a big,
Mm-hmm.
beefy, what we're used to seeing the Saints bring in as an
Mm-hmm.
offensive lineman, somebody who's pushing 3 bills, somebody who is pretty wide, big ass, is going to put his feet in the ground and just clear out a side.
Yeah.
And it looks like that's not the kind of guys they're going for right now. They're going for smaller, speedier guys who are going to move, have
Mm-hmm.
good feet. Um,
Yeah, and Matt Ulrich, I know you loved Christian Mahogany coming into the draft, and if Pete Carmichael and Doug Marrone and Sean Payton were still here, I think Mahogany might have been a guy that they looked at. But my draft analysis was just what Alan said of him. A phone booth mauler, a good technician, but forget about athleticism. I mean, this isn't a guy that's going to be able to pull on a consistently effective basis. He's not the kind of guy who is going to excel in an athletic outside zone blocking kind of scheme. Kyle Hergel, on the other hand, who didn't go drafted at all, so consider that too. He more fits what we believe the Kubiak, Rick Dennison, system is going to look like this year.
So Saints Twitter, as usual, had a meltdown. Speaking of the offensive line, Flaga drafted as a right tackle, played right tackle in college. The Saints dared move him to left tackle, and people lost their mind. I mean, go ahead and put the Heath Ledger Joker meme in there, and here we go. Because that's how these people were. I get it. You hate Dennis Allen. Anything Dennis Allen wants to do is stupid. He's stupid. I'm stupid. Everything's stupid. I hate life. I get that. But in reality, teams do this all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Willie Rose started on the right side, then they moved him to left tackle. Kyle Turley started on the right side. When they traded Willie Rove, he moved to left tackle. We just saw Ricky Jackson a few times. Ricky Jackson was a defensive end. They moved him to linebacker. Some guys, Carl Nix was a tackle in Nebraska. They kicked him inside the guard and became, he should be an NFL Hall of Famer, but unfortunately injuries ended his career. But he's a Saints Hall of Famer. So I mean, it's things that these leagues have teams done this. The Saints have done this many, many times. But they're bringing up when you bring up Zach Bond to buttress your argument. Come on, I mean, come on, honestly, the guy who's now playing for Atlanta, the linebacker, I'm just drawing a blank on his name, but the linebacker that the Saints had in the 7th round, who's now over in Atlanta, was a better linebacker and pass rusher than Zach Bond. Zach Bond, he was an overachiever. Really, he was a Mike Ditka kind of pick. Honestly, I mean, that's how that's what he reminded me of. He's a Mike Ditka kind of pick, where his ceiling was college football, not the pros. But don't get me started. Flaga at playing at left tackle. I mean, how do you look at this? I like it because that's your blind side. That's got to be your best offensive lineman. This is a time to see if it will work, not week 1 against whoever we play when the schedule comes out, but not week 1. You want to do this now and see how he fits with this, because you can't count on Penning.
No, you can't. And that's exactly what I don't remember if it was Dennis Allen or Clint Kubiak that said it, but they were obviously asked about it, and they should have been. And their instant reply was, "We know he can play right tackle. That's where he played in college when we drafted him. We want to see if he has the potential to play at left tackle if we need him there." That's the statement right there. And you listed a litany of Saints greats. I don't remember if Kyle Turley was among them too. Ryan Ramczyk's first Saints start was at left tackle. for an injured Teron Armstead. When Zach Strief went down against the Vikings, they had to move Andrus Peat to left tackle and shift Ryan Ramczyk over to right tackle, where he's played the remainder of his career. You need to know what kind of versatility your guys have, especially your top guys, because if Ryan Ramczyk can walk, Ryan Ramczyk's going to play. So at that point, what do you do with your first round pick? Do you sit him on the bench and wait till Rams' knees give out, or do you provide competition for Trevor Penning over on the left side? Because if you don't, what the hell do you have for an answer if Trevor Penning continues to be what Trevor Penning was last year? You need to know if you have an answer over there, because if not, you might not be done signing people. Fuaga is going to be a day one starter. Everybody assumes that it's going to be at right tackle because Ramczyk isn't going to be able to play. But we should know this about Ram. He's a warrior. And like I said, if he can walk, he'll play. We assume he's not going to be able to, or if he is, the sands of that hourglass is running out fast. That's probably why they drafted Fuaga. But you never know. Like you said, Willie Roaf, one of the greatest offensive linemen at any position on any team in NFL history. He started out as a right tackle. And correct me if I'm wrong, but at Louisiana Tech, Roaf was a left tackle, was he not?
Yes.
So I mean, what they do, they wanted to see him at right tackle because they had the Saints at the time had a bigger hole there. And ultimately, Roaf was an all-time great at left tackle. You don't know what you have in Fuaga. That's why again, as we said at the beginning of the show, you still have not only the entire training camp, but 2 OTA sessions left in the month of May alone. I like the move very much. I think Fuaga is probably a natural right tackle, but the one thing that I liked about Talese watching his tape at Oregon State was how quick his feet were, how agile his feet were for such a big man, something that nobody could say out of Trevor Penning. And you want your left tackle to be agile, to have quick feet, because he's going to be playing a lot of speed rushers over there. If Fuaga is a good fit at left tackle, now's the time to find that out.
I had said a while back, I think that Penning's future is right tackle anyway, just because I think that's much more where he's comfortable at, as just being a physical guy to throw people around. The issue I have with people freaking out like this is because call me crazy, call me irresponsible. It's like Lex Luthor from Superman in 1978. But I thought the goal was to get your 5 best offensive linemen on the field. How are you going to figure out who your 5 best are? This is not a line that is these players are set in stone. It's set in sand. Yeah, I mean, you've got to figure out who your offensive line is. I think that's part of the issue that people have right now is they're so used to, and I saw this the other day on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, that, people like, I can remember our top 5 players were Lattimore, Ramczyk, Kamara, Thomas, Breeze, go down the list, and I think the hard part they're having to figuring this out now is we're in that transition years where you don't have those core players set up where you're going, okay, I can count on this guy to be here. I can count on this guy to be my Pro Bowl guy. I can count on this guy. You're not there. He is building a new team, and you're in this transition period where it's time for these guys to make a name for themselves and figure out what you're going to do. I'm not giving up on Ramczyk. I'm not giving up on Penning. I know a lot of people are. I'm not, because I want to see if this new coach can do something with him. If he does not succeed this year, then he is a Jonathan Sullivan level bust.
Yes.
He is that kind of guy. Right now, I'm not willing to write him off. I think if you can get him at right tackle, if he makes that adjustment right tackle, I think you've got a just based on what I've seen out of him, I think that's the kind of guy you want at your right side because you want to be a right-handed team when you run the football. He's ideal for a running game where he's going to seal that edge
Mm-hmm.
and take guys inside so you can break outside.
Mm-hmm.
Kamara can break outside on these runs. I'm counting on this. I'm counting on this, Calvin, because I think Marone was just old school.
Mm-hmm.
I think the system just didn't work for a guy like Penning, and I think this system will, but it remains to be seen. If it doesn't happen, I'm not going to be shocked. I'm just going to be disappointed because I don't want him to be that bust. I want him to produce. And I
And the
go ahead.
team needs him to produce. Yeah,
Yeah.
they were only able to draft one offensive lineman, to be a day one starter, and you needed two. So the team something out of Trevor Penning, and and I said this about Marone down the stretch of the season. This past season, the biggest indictment of him is not only Trevor Penning, but let's take a look at Penning. Benched after number one draft choice, who you traded draft picks to get. Benched after 6 games, and even worse, and this is more noteworthy in my opinion. Only played he played less than 15 snaps over the last 11 games. Nick Saldiveri saw the field for only 18 snaps all season. Cesar Ruiz, former number one draft choice, you finally saw some mini breakthrough in 2022. Regressed last year, if you ask me. 3 young players, 2 high draft picks, and you've gotten 0 development out of them. Does that mean you whiffed on all 3 guys? Maybe. But I think it's more an indictment on your coaches not being able to develop your young talent. When you have guys surpassing you on the depth chart like Max Garcia and Landon Young, I think that is extremely telling of your coaches just as much as it is the talent at the position.
Yeah, I do not want the Saints offensive line to become essentially the Hazlitt era linebackers where you just can't you're drafting, and none of these guys are producing. You're not spending as many high picks, but basically you're not getting any kind of return out of any of these guys. That that's going to doom any coach.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care who's your coach. If you're missing at that level, especially high picks like these guys, first rounders, you just can't have that. Teams just can't survive that. So these guys have to work out, and I can't believe that they're that incompetent on drafting offensive linemen. It just doesn't make sense, especially because you hit on so many for so long.
Right.
I mean, you think about the Saints offensive line since 2006 and the guys that you have brought in that have become hits. Carl Nix, Jari Evans, Zach Streif, 7th-round pick. You hit on the kid from Townsend, who I just drew a blank on his name, but he was a starting left tackle for you for the Saints in the Super Bowl. They let Jerome Brown walk in favor of him.
Yeah. Bushrod, Armstead.
Armstead, yeah, exactly. Armstead. And then all the undrafted centers that we had over the years. Just guy you can't suddenly now, oh, I can't draft offensive linemen. I don't know what I'm doing. It just doesn't happen that way. You don't go from this streak. You might have hit a dry spell period, but you know what you like in offensive linemen. You should be able to get these guys. So I think these guys can. Uh, no, it's Jamal Brown. That's what I said. That's a Jamon Bushrod, and Jamal Brown. I remember
Mm-hmm.
Jamal Brown. That's who we took instead of Aaron Rodgers. But yeah, so these are guys, and these are small town colleges. I don't want to hear about you drafted Penning from Northern Iowa. You brought in Armstead from Arkansas Prime Bluff. You had Bushrod from Townsend. You had Jari Evans from what was it? It was Division II. I can't think of the name of the.
Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania.
Yes, Bloomsburg. Yeah, I mean, so I don't want to hear this that well, it's because you're not drafting from big schools. They figured this out. Andrus Peat, as much as we knocked this guy, he did go to 3 Pro Bowls.
Mm-hmm.
And you can say, well, popularity contest and all the other stuff, but he played well enough. Pete's biggest problem was he was a streaky guy and he got hurt a lot. But these guys, they know what they're doing. So that's why I have more optimism about a guy like Penning versus a guy, I don't know, like how I felt about, say, I don't know, a defensive lineman or especially a linebacker, bringing in those guys. It's just that's where you have mistakes. That's where the Saints have made a lot of mistakes.
Yeah, and you bring up a great point. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
What were you going to say? Oh,
I said you bring up a great point about the offensive line. If you were to question, this regime, and this regime, even though Dennis Allen is the coach now, most of the pieces for this draft regime goes back through Sean Payton all the way back to 2006. If you were to tell me, this Saints regime can't draft defensive linemen. Okay, the only one you really hit on was Cam Jordan, as far as the ends go. This regime can't draft linebackers. Okay, there's a long track record of that too. Offensive linemen, completely different story. I mean, we just ran, Nix, Bushrod, Armstead. These are among the Saints' all-time great offensive line. So you don't forget how to do that overnight.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Last thing. Was there anybody? Oh, the Raiders defensive tackle. That was the guy I wanted to bring up. The Saints on that defensive tackle. He's more of a 3 technique, which is really what they need. Is this a camp body, or does he actually have a shot for competing for time?
He has a shot at competing for time. He started a bunch of games for the Raiders a couple years ago, and it was a Raiders team. I think it was that Raiders team that went to the playoffs. I might be a year off of that, but anyway, he was a starter. He's not going to take reps away from Bresee or Shepard. But remember, this is a Saints team that's looking to replace Malcolm Roach and fill out the rotation. Bresee's going to get his reps. Shepard's going to get his reps. We hope to get something a little bit more from Saunders. Everybody assumes that guy is going to be Christian Boyd, and I like Boyd too. But Boyd's a 6th round pick. That doesn't guarantee anything. So I do think that Vickers has the potential to grab a spot if he turns some heads, because he is a 3 technique guy. He's a gap shooter. He's not going to be a guy that eats up blocks. It's pretty clear that guy is going to either have to be Boyd or Saunders, maybe Shepard, because your penetrators are going to be Bresee. Bresee, and this is where Vickers has his opportunity. So, and I know you feel the same way I do. I hate the term camp body, because folks, technically they're all camp bodies. Camp bodies are a waste of a signing. What were you saying about guys like Rashid Shaheed and Marcus Colston, and the list goes on and on and on. So don't tell me that Kendall Vickers does not have a shot. I think he has a legitimate opportunity to earn a spot on this depth chart.
Well, and it's funny because right before I brought up Vickers, I was getting ready to mention Marcus Colston. In 2 weeks, I think it is, maybe 3 now, will be the full mini camp where the entire team comes back, and they're going to be running around in shorts and helmets. And I don't know if they're going to allow the public in to see this. I don't know what the construction's like or anything like that, but they're going to be people who are going to ooh and ah if they get to watch the rookie mini camp and get to watch the Saints run the 7-on-7 drills and Spencer Rattler's just with a flick of a wrist is throwing a bomb to Rashid Shaheed and that kind of stuff. Just keep in mind Marcus Colston, when he was at minicamp, rookie minicamp, he was out of shape. He struggled. He labored through the stuff. He looked like a seventh round former tight end trying to compete for a roster spot.
Mhm.
6 weeks pass. He gets himself in shape. Bastard. He gets himself in shape in 6 weeks. Comes back to training camp, looks like a completely different player, and ends up being one of the Saints' most valuable players in that 2006 season. So when you see these guys running around in shorts and shells, like Bub, like Rattler, keep in mind it's shorts and shells. Everyone
Yep.
looks good, especially offensive players look good because offensive linemen aren't blocking. They're not rushing the quarterback. They're running 7-on-7 drills. It looks really fun. This would be a hell of a flag football team, but they don't play flag football in September and October, November, and so forth.
Well, that
It
was the
looks
other thing
good.
that cracked me up about the social media, in regards to Rattler. He looked so composed. I'd look composed in that scenario. My 6-year-old son would look composed in that scenario.
Yeah.
Take it with a grain of salt.
Yes. Yes. That doesn't mean that there are things you don't like
Right.
about it or like about these guys. There are a lot of things I'm going to like about watching these guys, but
Mm-hmm.
I got to keep in mind the back of my head because I used to be that way, during the Dick of Saints. I wanted to really, really believe this was going to happen. They just didn't. They weren't that good. It's not. They don't play in shorts and shells in the regular season. They have football equipment on. People get hit, and people start turning their heads because they're worried about getting hit. Despite how the football's played today, where it's a lot softer than this football got playing back here, they still get hit and they're still looking for the hit. So, anyway, Bob, what you got coming on the Bayou Blitz tomorrow night, or is it going to be tomorrow night?
Yeah. At least I think it's going to be tomorrow night. Where I want to talk about some of the quote unquote camp bodies, that might be able to make some noise. The Equanimous St. Browns, the Kendall Vickers, the Kalike Hudson, a linebacker. Guys like that. How much of a chance do they have? At not only making the roster, but having an actual positive impact for the team. Want to talk a little bit more about the receiver position and how they're going to work out in this new system. Guys like Bub Means, who Kyle Mosley and I had a chance to interview about a week and a half ago. Great kid, by the way. This is something I don't want to talk about, but since it's going to be released tomorrow in Roger Goodell's latest made-for-TV event, we're going to talk about the schedule. I think most of the Saints schedule will be released by the time we go on the air at 8 p.m. Central. So, as much as I just want to avoid it, it's going to be a topic of conversation with Brendan and I tomorrow. Going to be a topic of conversation with Jordy and I, and you and I next week. So it's unavoidable.
And listen, the schedule is going to be our topic next week. And Jeff Duncan kind of teased it. I'm not going to read NOLA.com to see it because I already know what he's going to say. The Saints are not going to be on very many primetime games. I don't expect them to be on a single Sunday night game. Probably the Peyton return to the Dome will be a Thursday night game. I expect them. That's going to be the nationally televised games. They'll probably be on Thursday night a couple of times. Maybe a Monday night game because Sunday night has become the premier broadcast.
Yeah.
Sunday night's
Yeah.
the night that everyone sees and watches the headline game. But the Saints aren't going to be on that because there's no more Drew Brees. This
No.
is what it was. This is what it was like even during the Dome Patrol years.
Mhm.
Okay, it's not just because it's Dennis Allen, but the NFL likes stars, so it's all about star networks.
Yeah. Yeah, if they are, it'll be the Sean Payton game. If they are Sunday night, it'll be the Sean Payton game, or it'll be a flex game late in the season if the Saints are playing well.
Yes, yes. But uh, it won't be a Thanksgiving game. I'd love to see the Saints play the Cowboys on Thanksgiving. It's not happening. Um, it's just not going to be those kind of games anymore. The Saints are not must-watch TV because there's no Sean Payton, there's no Drew Brees anymore. So everyone gets on national TV at least once, but that's what Thursday night. That's why Thursday night exists, unfortunately. I would like to see a holiday game with the Falcons. I would like to see a game where the Saints play the Falcons, but the Falcons aren't going to be a major draw either. They'll be on a little bit more, but they'll probably be more of a team that gets flexed later in the season, depending on how they're going. What you're going to see a shitload of is the Cowboys, the 49ers, the Eagles, a lot of NFC East games. Cowboys, Eagles, Giants, Commanders. Why anybody wants to watch that shit is beyond me, but you'll see a lot of that, especially on Monday Night Football. So, Oh, and Bill Belichick is now going to be on the Manning cast, which that'll be interesting. Listen, I didn't watch much of it because I was on with you guys, obviously on draft night, but my dad was watching the CBS or ABC version of the draft with Belichick and Nick Saban. Both of them are really good on that because they both know football. Saban was just talking about, he just coached a lot of these guys that were going in the draft, so he knew these players he was talking about. But Belichick, when he's not a coach and not dealing with the media, he's a member of the media, actually is a very entertaining, interesting person. So I'm kind of looking forward to this, see what kind of humor he comes up with in this Manning cast, because this is a man who's been in the NFL since 1950s as a ball boy. So he has seen the entire growth of the league. I'm really interested to see how these guys. I tell you what, I'd like to see Saban. I know he's doing college football, but I'd love to see Saban do pro football. And have him be a color commentator. What's going on? Because I tell you what, he really is a good. He is a knowledgeable, good coach. Bob, I just threw that last minute. I'm sorry. I'm dragging you on. You're fading fast. Check out the Bayou Blitz tomorrow night. Bob will let you know for sure it's going to be on. I'm pretty sure you're going to be on. If not, you'll be on Thursday night. Talk about the schedule. So we'll talk about the schedule on our show next week. OTAs will wrap up before we know it's minicamp, and then it's getting ready for training camp. So unbelievable. My dad always says, "What y'all going to talk about tonight?" There's no football. There's always something to talk about. So anyway. Thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you next time on Under the Dome. Good night, everybody.